At the end of this video, you'll get to understand the difference between a POE camera and a non-PoE camera. PoE, which stands for Power over Ethernet, is a term applied to cameras that have their video terminal having this kind of connector called the Ethernet port. And so PoE or non-PoE is not applied to these kind of cameras that have the BNC as their video terminal. And you'll recall that cameras like these that have BNC are analog cameras. And so PoE or non-PoE is a term applied to IP cameras because IP cameras are those that come with the Ethernet ports. So for a PoE or a power over Ethernet camera, those kind of cameras are capable of taking their power through the Ethernet port. What that means is that you can just use a network cable plugged into the Ethernet port of such a camera, and you can plug the other end of that Ethernet cable into a PoE switch. This is an example of a PoE switch. So if this camera were a PoE camera and we connect this other end of the network cable into the PoE switch, through this cable connection alone, we would have been able to get power into this camera, which can fully operate the camera without needing to supply power through this DC power connector to supply power into the camera. This connection alone would have been enough if the camera were a power over Ethernet or PoE IP camera. So on the other way around, a non-PoE camera is one that takes its power supply through the DC power port, and such cameras cannot receive their power through the Ethernet port as you do for a PoE camera. So for such cameras, you will need to either use a DC power adapter like this, whereby you would have to plug up into the DC power port of such cameras. So such cameras do not or are not built to receive their power supply through the Ethernet port. They just take their video through the Ethernet port, nothing else. So you need to use the DC power port to be able to take power into such cameras. Apart from using a DC power adapter, you can as well decide to use what we call the POE splitter for such cameras, so that you will not need to be using the DC power adapters. And in such a case, you would have still maintained your PoE switch, whereby because this switch is capable of providing power, you would have done your connection this way. You would have connected the cable coming from the network switch into the PoE splitter, because the PoE splitter comes with an Ethernet port, so you can put in the Ethernet cable into the PoE splitter. The splitter is called a splitter in the sense that it's able to divide the video and then the power aspect of the signal that comes from the PoE switch. And with this, you now have the video connection or the Ethernet connection, and then also the DC power provision for your camera, which is a non-PoE camera. So this is the second means of powering the non-PoE cameras, and so you need to take note of it. The non-PoE camera, this is how they are powered. If you find value in this video, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.